Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and we are back once again with a one-on-one interview with Sky Sports News reporter Dharmesh Sheth. Now Dharmesh, we're getting into the last week of the window here, and just when I thought United might be done, winding things down, wrapping things up, we've seen an absolute flurry of excitement over the last few days. So we're going to get into all that. Left backs, centre mids, goalkeepers, all sorts still going on. But first of all, how are you doing?
Counting down the days. I am on my final legs now, I've got to say. I don't know whether you can see my eye as well. I've managed to, I don't know how I did it. I'm playing five-a-side last night, and I've just a slight. I think it was actually self-inflicted. I think it was actually self-inflicted. Yeah, I think I might have poked myself in the eye, which is really clever.
Well, hopefully you might have poked yourself in the eye, but you're not going to put your foot in your mouth today, because I know we've been speaking before that you've got some juicy goss, which we'll get to in just a second. Yeah. Let's start with the left-back situation, because that's the one that's kind of sprung up out of necessity rather than want, really. We've got injuries to Shaw and Malacia, both kind of medium to long-term injuries. What is the latest with left-backs? We've seen Alonso, we've seen Cucurella, we've seen Reguilon, now we've seen Spinazzola come into play as well over the last sort of 24 hours. What's your understanding of the left-back situation, and how keen are United to get a deal done there?
Yeah, I think a lot of this flurry of activity that you were talking about in this final week has come about because of circumstance, and it's almost been enforced on United because of injuries. And I mean, I know a lot of fans were saying with the midfield area, which we will come to in a moment, it's almost been forced upon them again there. I don't know whether United were going to go into the market for a midfielder if this injury to Mason Mount hadn't come about. But, we'll come to that in a moment. But the left-back situation is a real worry for United just now. You mentioned the injuries to Luke Shaw and to Tyrell Malacia. My understanding is, yes, they are in the market to bring in a left-back and probably looking at a loan deal, which would probably make sense as well, because Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia will be back at some point during the season. But the fact that they are after someone in that position would probably indicate that, they're not coming back in a hurry, these two players, that, the injuries are probably a little bit more lengthy than maybe we're being led to believe with Shaw and Malacia, hence why they want to go into the market. I know against Forest, they moved Diogo Dalot, from his usual right back spot to play in the left back area. I don't think, in an ideal world, Erik ten Hag wants to continue doing that, particularly in the big games. So you mentioned those names there, the ones that have come about and the ones that United are looking at: Tottenham, Sergio Reguilon, Chelsea's Marc Cucurella. I mean, it was cost them £60 million not too long ago. Yeah. That is the interesting one for me. And also Spinazzola from Roma, who you mentioned there. Sky Italy this morning have been reporting that United are looking at him as an option as well. I say the Cucurella one is probably the most interesting one, only because if it is to be a loan deal and you have the likes of Shaw and Malacia coming back at some point in the next month or two, then Cucurella is a player who could probably play in other positions as well. So it wouldn't be right once they come back, that's it, Cucurella doesn't play. He could still find a place for him in along the back four, could Erik ten Hag. And I'm not sure whether that would be the case for the other specialist left backs that United have been linked with. That's not to say that they wouldn't go for them, because there are issues in the defence just now, and not just in the left back area.
Yeah. Another one that you mentioned there is Spinazzola, and he's an interesting one because, first of all, he's pretty much the first player United have been linked with in the last 12 months who hasn't played under Ten Hag, as far as I can see. But it's a slightly different profile, isn't he? He's 30, he's slightly later in his career. I know Alonso's older as well, but Cucurella and Reguilon both in their sort of mid-20s. That seems to be a slightly left field one, because all the rest have all the rest have played in the Premier League, so that's one kind of criteria that's ticked there. Spinazzola slightly different. What can you tell us about that? Is there genuine interest there, or is he just on a list?
Yeah, like I said, this is the one that's emerged this morning, and I've heard it as recently as you have from our colleagues at Sky in Italy. And you say about the age profile, but remember, the information we have is that United are looking at a loan for this position. Yeah. So I don't think the age factor would come into it so much unless they were looking for someone on a more permanent basis. And it seems like, Malacia was Eric Ten Hag signing. Luke Shaw has signed a new contract recently. So those would be the two, players that he would want in that position. So it doesn't surprise me that they're going for different kind of profiles in that area, be it, the kind of player they are, but also the age. I don't think the age would be that much of a factor when you come to just trying to bring in someone on a loan deal. And you've got to remember as well, you've got to look at the situations of certain players at those clubs as well. Reguilon is completely out of favour under Ange Postecoglou, and Marc Cucurella is not getting a look in with Mauricio Pochettino. And usually deal with rivals, for certain players. But when it comes to players who are completely out of favour, then maybe there's a deal to be done somewhere.
Yeah. Spinazzola, just an interesting one for viewers watching. I'm just checking him out now in terms of his stats. He played for Juventus from 2012 to 2019, but was on loan for every single one of those years except the last year. He was on loan for 6 years in a row while he was at Juventus, which is, not doesn't affect this transfer, but it's a slightly odd career trajectory. Yeah, and he might be on loan again. He's very much used to loans. I think he's had 7 or 8 loans already. So, yeah, like you said, the age, I suppose, doesn't necessarily matter, but maybe not playing in the Premier League would be one. Moving on then to midfield, and this is a strange one where we've had this Sofyan Amrabat conversation. Me and you have had it, I think, 3 or 4 times now. We've been having it on the channel for most of the summer, really. That name has been linked to Manchester United, and it's been anywhere from initial contact made to reports coming out of Italy that the deal is done. It just requires a tick, a signature. Basically, we've almost heard that level of completion. Then in the last couple of weeks, it's been Amrabat's not with the squad, so he's making noises and making a fuss to get a move to somewhere. And then next thing you know, this morning, you're tweeting it. I saw a little bit of elsewhere as well. We've got Hojbjerg on the horizon as well, which, again, another player who I thought, right, he hasn't played for Ten Hag. But what do you know? The picture of him at Bayern Munich too arises playing under Ten Hag like all the other transfers. What's the situation in midfield and this sort of ongoing Amrabat thing, and then Hojbjerg coming out of nowhere in the last sort of few hours?
This is an interesting situation because up until about a couple of weeks ago, the chances of a major outfield arrival were close to 0 at Manchester United, even though there were these strong links with Sofyan Amrabat. But like we were explaining with the left-back area, and maybe how United have started the season and how exposed potentially people have seen Casemiro to have been in those opening 3 Premier League games, maybe United and Eric Ten Hag have changed their tack slightly and thought, well, maybe we do need to bring another body in to that midfield area. I'll go through these one at a time with regard to the information that I have. Now, with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, it's my understanding now that initial contacts have been made over the conditions of a potential deal for the Tottenham midfielder. He's entered the final 2 years of his contract, and we're told that Tottenham would allow him to leave if a suitable offer came in. Those are the words I was given, a suitable offer. Does that mean it's a permanent deal? Or potentially, is there still the prospect of it being a loan with an option, with an obligation potentially? Because with 2 years left on his contract still, they still have that leeway that if they just wanted to do a loan to get him more regular first team football, and he wasn't to go to that club and he came back to Spurs with a year left, if he has played well in that loan spell, wherever he goes, then potentially his market value can be maintained than if he wasn't playing any football at all. So there's plenty to think about with regard to Tottenham, but I think they are open to allowing him to leave. I mean, he was so close to leaving for Atletico Madrid earlier on in this transfer window, but that quite didn't get over the line. He's since made 2 substitute appearances, albeit relatively late substitute appearances in the opening 3 Premier League games for Tottenham. So it is definitely one to watch because this one has kind of emerged in the last 24 hours. We were told that, they've been offered the chance to speak to him, to now maybe there's been a little bit of contact there now just to find out what kind of deal potentially could be done for Hojbjerg, and if United could actually sanction a move like that, because we know about all of United's financial situations. And we've been talking about those more than Amrabat throughout this transfer window.
Yeah.
And talking about Amrabat, look, no mistake about it, he was an option. Erik ten Hag does like him. Erik ten Hag has managed him before at Utrecht. But the information we're getting in the last week or so is more of the noise is coming from the Italian end and from the players' camp to try and force through a move, rather than it coming from United being proactive about trying to get Amrabat. Because if you believe everything you're reading about, you know, what kind of price he would come for, he's into the final 2 years of his contract. And some people are saying, you know, around £20 million and you can get Sofyan Amrabat. If that was the case, I just wonder whether United would have pressed play on that deal a little while ago. Because it on the face of it, does it look like it's an easy deal to do? Or is it true that the noises are indeed coming from outside Manchester, and that the move is trying to be forced there? So definitely an option, along with Højbjerg and Ryan Gravenberch as well. There was talk of potential swap deal, wasn't there, with Scott McTominay? That there were reports coming out of Germany with that. We don't know whether that is a goer or not, because as it stands, McTominay will probably end up staying at United, given how little time there is left in the window. But again, you can't rule it out. And I'm not trying to sit on the fence here and be a cop-out, because you just don't know what can happen in the final 3 days. Because even on deadline day, if a certain deal can come through, then United might think about it. Look, this is probably the best for all parties, particularly if they've got someone in already. And as you mentioned before, the common theme seems to be with these midfielders, and we shouldn't be surprised about it, is that Erik ten Hag knows all three of them really well. I mentioned Amrabat, he played under him at Utrecht. Gravenberch, of course, played under Erik ten Hag at Ajax. And the really obscure one, which, like, where's this picture come from when it went all over social media yesterday, was that Pierre-Emile Højbjerg was at Bayern Munich, and he played under Ten Hag in the Bayern Munich second team when Ten Hag was in charge of that team. So definitely one to watch in the last few days, the left back area and the central midfield area, when we thought as recently as a week ago all of the incoming business is done.
I genuinely think if you tweeted now, Joe Smith from Stretford Paddock is being monitored by Manchester United, somehow Twitter would find a picture of me playing for Ten Hag at some club. And I've never been a professional footballer, but they would just find it, because if United want them, then inevitably they've played for Ten Hag at some point. Just on the Højbjerg thing.
Joe, I just want to ask you a question, actually. I don't want to reverse this, but I mean, you've got the ear of Manchester United fans more than I would have. I'm just wondering what you're hearing about what their reaction is about the approach of United, particularly with the players that Erik ten Hag knows, and that seems to be the transfer policy since he's arrived.
Yeah, from what I see, and obviously chatting to other lads on the channel and seeing what we see in the comments, I think there's a bit of apprehension about it. I think there's an element of, you know, Manchester United are a step up from Ajax and the other teams that Ten Hag has managed. So it's not necessarily the case that people who are good enough for those teams will be good enough for United, and, you know, to one day compete against Man City and these other teams, you know, Real Madrid and stuff in the Champions League. But on the other hand, as United fans, and I'll speak for myself here, I've seen United scouts and United's board pick players over the last decade who made no sense for the manager, who made no sense from one manager to the next. We've required once again an absolute overhaul and a rebuild since Ten Hag has arrived, and I don't necessarily trust that model either. So, you know, whilst it seems to be working, and whilst Ten Hag as a coach seems to be working, I would put slightly more faith in him getting players he would like than the club buying, you know, the likes of Di Maria's and Falcao's and players who don't really want to be here but like the idea of a pay rise. So I don't know. I haven't got enough evidence to say that it's going to work, but I do have a bit of evidence from the last 10 years to say that the other model isn't great either. So I'm happy to go along with it for now, I think. But yeah, there's obviously a slight concern of, you know, the manager shouldn't be the scout and the coach and the manager all at once. But
I think there's been an element of trust there now with Erik ten Hag, isn't there? Because he's come in and he has had a few windows, and, you know, compared to where United were when he took over, and particularly after those first two games, he's taken them to a trophy and to a top 3 finish. So I think on that side, there's an argument to say, well, actually, it is working. So maybe this is the way to go.
Yeah, maybe. Just on Hojbjerg a little bit more then. I understand Amrabat, obviously, he's looking to, move on. He's coming to the end of his contract and he'd like to leave. Hojbjerg, over the last 3 seasons, has played 53, 48 and 44 games for Tottenham. How is he
new manager.
Rapid? Just the new manager doesn't like him? Is that what you're hearing?
New manager, if you think about how Tottenham have started and how they want to play under Ange Postecoglou, there are a couple of players that were simply not getting a look in under Antonio Conte, like Yves Bissouma. People actually forgot about him. And suddenly, you've seen Yves Bissouma. It's the Brighton Yves Bissouma that suddenly turned up this season.
Yeah.
Pape Matar Sarr as well has come in, a young player, dynamic player who Postecoglou likes, and it fits the way that Postecoglou wants to play. And I think what some United fans have told me is, why are United going for a Tottenham player who's not getting into the team at Tottenham? I think that's quite an easy, criticism to point to. But if Erik ten Hag sees someone like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg as fitting how he wants to play and maybe being the missing piece for United in the way they want to play just now, then, he will know better than us, I think, wouldn't he?
Yeah. And it wasn't so long ago that, Højbjerg was a crucial part of that Tottenham team. I think he played more games than anyone in one season for them, and he was talked about as one of the most sort of underrated players in the league, and all of these things that he does. So I do think he's got some good qualities. It's just a slightly surprising one, but then you see that image of him in the Bayern Munich 2 kit, and you realise actually maybe there's slightly less surprise there than we thought.
It's just the optics, isn't it? Just say, for example, United had gone for him last January when he was playing every single game for Tottenham.
Yeah.
Would the feeling have been slightly different? I don't know. I don't know whether it would have been. It's just that what people are perceiving now, we can't get in the Tottenham team, so why Manchester United going for him?
Yeah. I think there's more to it than that, personally. Let's move on then a little bit. Here's a slightly strange one. Anthony Martial's been linked with a move to Real Madrid. That seems like rumour to me. I can't see a world where not just Madrid would necessarily want him, but United could be in a position to let another striker go. Is there any possibility to that? And if so, would that mean another attacker coming in for United?
I mean, to do all of that in the space of, as we record this, in 3 days is going to be very, very difficult. And also, whenever I talk about Anthony Martial and you see Erik ten Hag talking about Anthony Martial, he's always full of praise for him. He always believes that Manchester United are a better team when Martial plays. Now, we saw what happened in the opening 2 games of the season. I'm not saying it's about Martial, but United played Marcus Rashford in a central striking position. And I'm not saying that the performance against Nottingham Forest was better, but United, after those first 4 minutes, by all accounts, performed quite well. And they had a situation where Marcus Rashford had so much more of an impact coming in from the left when there was someone else in the central striking role. The noises are that he's been offered to Real Madrid. It's a very difficult one to see. From Real Madrid's perspective, they probably do need a striker because, Karim Benzema's left the club. There was talk of Harry Kane, but they didn't bring one in. So is there a possibility of Martial going and then United trying to bring someone else in? Be a dangerous game to play for United, only because they've got Højlund, who hasn't actually started a game yet, who's recovering from injury. Martial, who started his first game against Nottingham Forest over the weekend, having just recovered from injury. Do they then go in with just one striker? Or is there something we don't know about and that Martial is on his way to Real Madrid and they've already got someone else lined up to bring in? There's 3 days left. I'm not sure it's the biggest priority in the United squad just now, because the left back and the central midfield area seems to be taking a lot of focus just now. Yeah,
it seems as though that one's going to be, like you said, we've got left back, we've got central midfielder. I want to talk about goalkeepers and centre backs as well. Like it's amazing that with 3 days left in this window, in a window that a month ago seemed like one where we'd got our business done early. Wow, this isn't like Man United. We're not leaving everything till the last minute. And with 3 days left, there's potential for a left back, a centre back, a central midfielder, and maybe an attacker to come in, and a goalkeeper. Like, how I can't, but we're sat here, and all of those things are possible. So let's move on to the goalkeeper then. Obviously, Onana, first choice keeper, has come in. Dean Henderson has now, I think, passed his medical, or completed his medical at Crystal Palace. That deal looks like it's going to happen. United linked with other goalkeepers. What's going on there? Obviously, would that be a backup keeper, and what are the names that you're hearing there?
Yeah, so Dean Henderson, that deal is close to being finalised with Crystal Palace. He's completed his medical. It's a permanent move, worth around £20 million, which is perhaps why Manchester United could go back into the market for a midfielder, because it was not only to do with squad size and filling certain positions, but it was also to do with finances. Now, the Dean Henderson one, if that goes through, United will then push on with a deal for Altay Bayındır from Fenerbahce for around 4.3 million pounds. The thing is, United want to get both of those deals done effectively simultaneously, definitely before the midday deadline on Friday, because that's when players have to be registered for the game, the next Premier League game. And in this case, it's Arsenal away on Sunday, because they don't want to be left in a position where the Dean Henderson deal gets done, but they still haven't completed the deal for Bayındır, and he wouldn't be able to be part of that squad on Sunday. I don't think United want to be in that position. So I know Friday is deadline day and they could do the deal before 11 o'clock at night, but I don't think they want to leave themselves short going into such a big game like that, to have a goalkeeper that may be fourth choice at Manchester United on the bench in case something was to happen to Andre Onana. So that's the situation with the goalkeepers. We know Dean Henderson had talks with Nottingham Forest over a loan with an obligation. That couldn't be agreed in the end, because there was a lot of talk about how many games it would take for that loan to become an obligation to buy. I think United wanted fewer games. Nottingham Forest wanted a few more games, because there was issues about the injury that he sustained at the start of the year that cut short his season at Forest when he was on loan there last season. So Crystal Palace have come in because they've got a situation there where Vicente Guaita doesn't want to be at the club anymore. Sam Johnston's the current number one, with Rob Matthews the number two. But Dean Henderson, you would think, would go in there and compete on a more level playing field to become number one than he would with Andre Onana, because we know that is Eric Ten Hag's choice. He spent, over £50 million on Onana. He is the number one. So Henderson wouldn't really be getting a look in with regard to becoming number one at Manchester United. So that's the situation there. All being well, that should go through in the next couple of days. And I think United want to get both of those deals done as soon as possible, so that everything is in place for the game against Arsenal on Sunday.
That makes a lot of sense. That sounds like a pretty sensible bit of business, actually, from Man United. Get 20 million for one, spend 5 of it on a backup keeper, and 15 maybe elsewhere. That actually kind of works, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Bayındır deal as well. I mean, it was almost as good as confirmed. I don't know whether you saw Fred's interview. Yeah, he's moved to Fenerbahce, and he was interviewed and he was asked about Altay Bayındır, and he basically said, I wished him good luck. Yeah. He goes to a big team in England. I gave him some suggestions for neighbourhoods to live in. And of course, I said it was raining a lot. I've no doubt that he will be very happy there. So it looks like it's a case of when and not if Henderson goes to Palace and Bayındır comes to United.
Very good. Let's move on to sort of an and finally. Harry Maguire, this on-off West Ham. I think last time we spoke, you sort of said it's off for now, but it could be back on. Then the last couple of days it was back on, but maybe a loan. And then the final thing I've heard, or more recently, is United have put a stop to this. They don't want this to happen. But then people saying it could still, this one is genuinely just, will it, won't it? But what is going on? I'm genuinely confused by all of this.
I'm reluctant to say it's completely off. Yeah. Because you can never say never, only because of what's happened during this transfer window with Maguire. Because earlier on in the window, West Ham had agreed a deal with United for £30 million. It looked like that was going to happen, only for Maguire to say, no, actually, I want to stay at United. I want to fight for my place. Now, throughout this season so far, he's not played a single minute. He's been an unused substitute. He's effectively fourth choice, you'd say, in the central defensive department. And that's before Luke Shaw comes back, because last season, you could argue that he was probably fifth choice once everyone was fit. But he's backing himself as it stands. He's backing himself as it stands. I'm sorry, I keep saying the words "as it stands," but that is what I'm going to be saying a lot on Sky Sports News, I think, for the next 3 days, because you just can't tell what's going to happen, especially with this deal with Maguire. So West Ham thought they'd got a deal done. It didn't happen. He stays at United. So that was the case up until about the last week. Then we were told that West Ham were going back in for him, but what they were exploring was a loan deal.
Yeah.
And on the face of it, you could see that being a potentially good move for all parties, because Harry Maguire wants to get regular first-team football because there's the Euros at the end of the season. West Ham United bring in a quality central defender. They're fighting on four fronts as well.
Yep.
And it's a player that they've liked and that they've wanted to bring in. However, since they agreed that £30 million deal and it was no longer happening, they've gone back into the market to bring in another central defender. They went to Stuttgart and brought in Konstantinos Mavropanos. So they now got four central defenders in Aged, Ogbon. Wonder whether they were bringing Maguire in and whether they were going to release someone, or whether he was going to be part of 5 central defenders that were going to compete. Now, on the face of it, it might have worked for all parties, including United, who effectively weren't playing him. But I just wonder whether the situation with Raphael Varane has maybe changed United's mind once again, because he came off at half-time. Yeah. And there's been no public news since about whether it's an injury, how serious it is, how long he's going to be out for. Whether they're still assessing Raphael Varane's fitness before making a final decision on Maguire, that could be a question that would need asking. But also, earlier on in the window, this deal would have been easier to do when it was agreed with West Ham United, because United had Benjamin Pavard effectively ready to go. They were ready to do that deal once the Maguire one was done. Now, once the Maguire one wasn't done, the Pavard one effectively couldn't happen, because they needed the money from the Maguire deal to fund the Pavard deal. Since then, Inter Milan have come in for Benjamin Pavard. But interestingly, they still haven't managed to complete that deal for Pavard. And it looked like it was going to get agreed. I just wonder whether there's something going on in the background, why that deal hasn't happened. Is it anything to do with Maguire, or probably more significantly, is it something to do with Bayern Munich trying to bring in a replacement? And we believe that replacement to be Trevor Chalobah from Chelsea. And does he want to go to Bayern Munich? So all sorts of dominoes need to fall into place. And Harry Maguire might not even be part of those dominoes, because West Ham United went in with a loan deal. We're exploring a loan deal, rather. And as it stands, it doesn't look like it's happening. And Harry Maguire, as it stands, sorry, phrase again, is staying at Manchester United, where he will continue to fight for his place. And I think it's one of those where, if he does stay in this transfer window, he's got one more opportunity in January if he's not getting regular first-team football. Now, I know the Euros are going to be very important to him, and I know he wasn't getting that much game time last season, but he still made Gareth Southgate squads for the internationals that have been going on in the past year. Yeah. I just wonder whether this time it will be different, because if he's not getting regular first-team football at United now, there's a major tournament at the end of the season in the Euros, and there are now other English central defenders who are getting more game time for their clubs than Maguire is. That might come into Maguire's thinking, and maybe in January, if he's not getting the game time he wants, it might get revisited again.
It's all kicking off, isn't it? I genuinely, I thought, leading up to this chat, I thought we might not have a lot to talk about here. United have got their business done. That might be it. And then all of a sudden, there's a potential 5 transfers, that any number of which could happen before the end of the summer. So we've got 3 days left, and we will be speaking to you again on deadline day, which we're very much looking forward to. Hopefully, we'll at least have 1 or 2 or 3 or not. I don't even know how many of these deals done by then. But hopefully, we'll know a little bit more about United's squad come the end of that international break. Thank you very much, Dharmesh, for joining us. That has been Dharmesh Sheth, Sky Sports News reporter. This has been a one-on-one interview with Stretford Paddock. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell as well, because anytime there's breaking news, anytime there's an update on Manchester United, we will be going live and bringing you videos. So hit that button so you see it first. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a bit.